It's Friday, the 4th of June 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. In today's headlines, the federal government launches a rescue package for Victorian workers, but takes a swipe at lockdown-happy premiers. Plus, the Australian share market hits a new record high as oil companies surge. Retail sales jump, but it's not good news for the department stores. And Qantas has a major problem with snakes. Our lead story today, the federal government will introduce a new national disaster payment scheme to help workers hit by state-imposed lockdowns. But in a swipe at Victoria, the payments will only be made available if the Commonwealth agrees that a lockdown is necessary. Canberra will also help fund a dedicated quarantine facility in Victoria, with media reports saying it will commit $200 million to the construction of a 500-bed facility in Avalon. The payments will be discussed at the National Cabinet today, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison wants the states to foot half the bill. He said there'd be no financial support if lockdowns lasted less than 7 days. There's been a stark difference in attitudes of the Berejiklian coalition government in New South Wales and the Andrews Labor government in Victoria about lockdowns, with lockdowns much more likely in the southern state. The PM yesterday highlighted that recent lockdowns in Western Australia and Queensland didn't trigger requests for federal funding, unlike Victoria. Business groups welcome the payments, though Business Council of Australia Chief Executive Jennifer Westacott said Australians were footing the bill for Victoria's failure to get the basics right. 1/3 of all Australians over 50 have now received at least one jab, and half of those over 70 have been vaccinated. There's still a long way to go before we get to the end of the COVID-19 crisis. In overseas news, the United States will ban Americans from investing in 59 Chinese companies, mostly in the defence and surveillance technology sectors, in an effort to stop US capital being used by China to undermine national security. Telco equipment manufacturer Huawei was one of the companies. Israeli opposition parties have reached agreement to form a government, ending the 12-year reign of Benjamin Netanyahu, the country's longest-serving prime minister. The new coalition involves 8 political parties from the left to far right, including an Arab party, and keeping it together will be quite a feat. The most likely PM is Naftali Bennett, leader of a small right-wing party that won just 7 of the 120 seats in Parliament. And global food prices rose by their most in a decade last month, as a drought in major producer Brazil and strong demand from China pushed the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization's food price index up 40%. The countries likely to suffer most are the poorest, including some in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, according to the UN. Locally, the S&P ASX 200 hit a new intraday and closing high yesterday, finishing up 0.6% to 7,260 points. Energy companies were the star performers on the back of rising oil prices. Brent crude is trading close to $72 a barrel, the highest since late 2018. It reflects confidence in demand during the upcoming northern summer. Meanwhile, the price of gold fell sharply overnight, down almost 2% to $1,873 an ounce. That might be hard on the local gold miners today. The precious metal still has plenty of friends though. ANZ analysts have tipped gold to move beyond $2,000 an ounce on the back of rising inflation expectations. Retail sales rose 1.1% during April, and the national trade balance climbed to $8 billion, according to figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. In the retail sector, the decline of department stores like Myer and David Jones continues. Myer's market cap has jumped sharply since late last year. It is now around $270 million. JB Hi-Fi's market cap is $5.5 billion. The federal government has dumped one of the key planks of its signature superannuation reform, following a raft of criticism from the industry and politicians. Under the proposals, the Treasurer of the Day would have had the right to veto an investment decision of a super fund, including retrospectively. But media reports say that part of the legislation will be dropped. It's a big win for the super funds, though it was a pretty dumb policy to begin with. New vehicle sales jumped again in May after a record April, reflecting pent-up demand, low interest rates and a growing economy. More than 100,000 new vehicles were sold during the month, up 68% on a year earlier in the middle of the pandemic. However, dealers are still grappling with long delays in supplying some models, mostly because of the global shortage of semiconductors. Toyota was again the leading manufacturer, followed by Mazda and Kia. And finally, Qantas is facing a somewhat unusual challenge. Its A380s parked in California's desert are apparently popular with the venomous Mojave rattlesnake and scorpions, and they've been making homes in the jumbos. According to media reports, engineers who are looking after the planes now have a new tool to combat the threat. Wheel whackers. I kid you not. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you hit follow so you get it every morning. And if you'd like more detail and more stories, search for our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. We also release a daily interview. Today we're talking to Tim Fung, the founder and CEO of Airtasker, one of this year's most exciting IPOs. I'll be back later with the afternoon market report. I'm Sean Aylmer. Have a great day.